is the Private Officer Beat Radio with Rick McCann at the microphone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat Radio. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at, whatever time it might be. I'm your host, Rick McCann. Glad that you're joining us. Many of you, I understand, are downloading some of the streaming episodes, listening days, weeks, even months later, and we do have a way to kind of look at when the programs are downloaded, and we've even seen some recently that were downloaded recently, but they were old programs going back years, and so we appreciate that. We really do. Our program is available at more than 27 different locations, broadcasted primarily here on our own network, as well as iHeartRadio, Amazon Radio, and any place where you can get your podcast, music downloads, and other streaming services, including Apple, iTunes, and many other places. So thank you all for listening. Remember, we do have every radio show currently available since the beginning of time, since the beginning of the time of the radio show. In our library, you can go back to the very beginning, almost 20 years ago, and there's a lot of good information that was recorded 15, 10, 11, 12 years ago that is still very much in tune with what's happening today and relevant. So be sure to go back and research that. A lot of good training there that you're going to get for free. And as I tell people all the time, you know, free is good. You can get free training online. Most of it is not so good, but it's a quick certificate. We're giving you some pretty in-depth information, including today. We're going into our the third episode of Street Crimes. This will be the third in the three-part series, the trilogy. And, of course, you'll be able to get this, to be able to download it and listen to it at home, driving, and so forth. But even more exciting, you'll be able to get this as a training module coming up here soon, and we'll be announcing that. And I think that this is going to be an excellent tool for people to be able to understand what security is and what they're not, what they can and can't do, and the changes that are afoot. Many, many, many people realize the changes, even some police chiefs. And when we come back from our first break, I will explain what's recently happened and how we're following up and how you may want to as well. We are inundated, I guess that's a good proper word, with award nominations for the 2022 Private Officer Awards. So next week we'll be announcing those awards. Some of them are definitely more than warranted. Remember that each year, Private Officer International is the only law enforcement and private security organization that sponsors and has sponsored Private Officer Awards, and you can even nominate yourself. You don't have to wait for an award program. You don't have to wait for our annual award event. No, you can nominate yourself or your coworker, your manager, your boss, or anybody else for an award. And we have about 15 or 20 now, different types of awards. You can even nominate a law enforcement officer. We've had teachers nominated because of the work that they do in the classroom. We've had a couple of civilians recently nominated and presented with awards. So remember, helpdesk@privateofficer.com for all of your information. Or if you want to nominate someone, you just go to our website, privateofficer.org/awards. We're sad today to again announce that 3 security officers were murdered in the past 7 days, and a number of others have been shot. Among the 3 murdered was a church security officer. Daniel Bourne was patrolling the parking lot of a church in Albuquerque Friday night. The 61-year-old man texted his supervisor a picture of a pickup truck that he thought was suspicious. He was texting with security staff at the church when suddenly the text went silent. Security officers immediately went to the parking lot of the Calvary Church and found the 61-year-old man dead. Police believe he was struck on purpose by a vehicle, dragged for some length, and then run over, the driver fleeing. The good news, if there is any in this tragedy, is that police, because of the photo that was texted by the smart, quick-thinking security officer, helped to identify who was behind the wheel, and police later arrested him in Wyoming. He is not talking. He asked for an attorney as soon as investigators began asking questions. The tragic thing here is, and this is a great example of what I have been saying and preaching through the years, he was an armed security officer. Evidence now shows that he may have fired 1 round because they found a shell casing in the parking lot. So this was not a case of an unarmed security officer who was out there thrown to the wolves. He was armed. He's former military, has experience, and he was also a retired commander of the County Fire and Rescue. Very tragic. 2 other security officers, one working at a convenience store in New York City, gunned down during a robbery at the bodega. His name not released, though the family has identified him as Julio Sanchez. We don't know much about what happened other than it was a robbery, and now we have a new report that came in early this morning that a nightclub security officer in the wee hours of Sunday was gunned down, and we're still tracking that information. We are sadly on the tracks right now to hit 100 murdered security officers this year. We're not talking about security officers off duty. We're not talking about security officers dying of COVID. We're not talking about private security or private law enforcement suddenly having a heart attack, having a medical emergency. No. There are some of those that we report this year, as in all years. But we're talking this year 100. We're on track to hit 100 murdered security officers. Does anyone give a damn? I don't think so. It sure doesn't seem that way. We have made great strides in how we contact the media, how we work with both local and national media on these and other similar topics with little response. But even more concerning and sad to me is that even our own profession, the security industry, don't respond. Even the employers seldom want any assistance or want to get involved and don't respond. A prime example, a Garda World security officer was gunned down in California during an armored truck robbery. Recently, we reached out to them several times by email, by communicating with them. No response. And this is not the first time that this company has not responded. But this is par for course. When I come back, we're going to talk about some very other concerning topics. And of course, we've got the final, third training, street crimes, the new horizon for private security. We'll be right back on the Private Officer Radio.
What am I doing lying in this casket? Oh yeah, that's right. I'm dead. I got shot. I'm not supposed to be dead. I'm only 17, and now I can't see my 18th birthday because I'm a fatal victim of gun violence. My friends, my family, my own mother was devastated. Can't see her son anymore because of gun violence. And everyone's here at the funeral. But before they lay me to rest, there's just one last thing I have to do. How many more of us have to die from gun violence? Let's put a stop to this, because if we don't, the next time it could be your child lying in this casket.
Brought to you by Man Up Inc. USA, a proud member of the Gun Violence Awareness Movement.
Across the country, there's a new 3-digit emergency number if you're feeling suicidal, if you're experiencing a life crisis. 988 is now the 3 digits that you can dial, just like 911 across the country. You'll connect with mental health professionals, and the 988 number will connect you with the Crisis Lifeline, formerly known as a National Suicide Prevention Line. Veterans can press 1 after dialing 988 to connect directly to the Veterans Crisis Lifeline, which serves our nation's veterans, service members, National Guard, and Reserve members, and those who support them. For text, veterans should continue to text the Veterans Crisis Lifeline short code 838255. Too many people experience suicidal crisis or mental health-related distress without the support and care that they need. But you're not alone. Simply pick up the phone and dial or text 988. Someone will answer that phone who is caring, understanding, and there to help you. 988. There is hope. I just told you that the armored car security officer was murdered in California. And now, on Friday, we were notified that another armored truck was ambushed and attacked in Oakland, California, right next door to San Leandro, where the other security officer was murdered. This time it was a Brinks security truck. Multiple people were shot. One is dead. According to police, the armored truck stopped at a Napa Auto Parts store at the 4400 block of International Boulevard. The robbery suspects waited until one employee of the truck was left alone and then attacked. One of the would-be robbers are dead, shot to death by security officers returning fire. This is not something new. It is not something that will go away. It is not something that we can continue to ignore the way that we are. A security officer in Florida this past week working at an apartment complex sitting in his vehicle came under gunfire. It doesn't say if he was armed or unarmed, but he was wounded. A off-duty deputy sheriff in Houston working security this past week was pinned against the vehicle by a suspect who rammed into him with his car and pinned him between the two cars, the deputy having to shoot and kill the driver to free himself. A security officer in South Carolina working at a nightclub this past week also had gunfire and was involved in an exchange of rounds with the suspect. Recently, the press was notified that a security officer in Las Vegas, Pedro Lozano, a suspect, and Randall Lyons, the 67-year-old security officer at the El Cortez Hotel and Casino. The security officer was dispatched to a disturbance. He found the person physically attacked the security officer, knocking him to the ground, and he died of his injuries. The suspect now charged in that case with homicide. These are not isolated cases, incidents, attacks. This is the way of life for private security, and yet few want to step forward and acknowledge that. And this really is disheartening. It really is disheartening. I can go on and on. I can tell you about all the retail LP agents that are under attack almost every day across the country. I have no words, to be honest with you. A security officer in Houston, Texas this past week was in uniform. He was on the way to work and about to drop off his 2-year-old boy when he stopped at a gas station. Some words were exchanged with a man, but no one really knows what or why. The man shot and killed the off-duty security officer, then carjacked him, stole his vehicle with the 2-year-old inside. Sadly, both the security officer and his 2-year-old son died. The security officer died from his gunshots. The 2-year-old was later found dead inside the vehicle that had been stolen from heat stroke. At this time, we don't know if an arrest has been made. We haven't seen any announcement of it, but it's a possibility. Police in Maryland also looking for a suspect who brutally attacked a security officer in Baltimore County. And on and on and on it goes. What is it that we need to do? What is it going to take for security company owners and clients, I blame them as well, to see where we're at in this country? Also in Dallas, Texas, a security officer working at a 7-Eleven came under attack and shot and killed his attacker. Police arriving found the man in front of the 7-Eleven with multiple gunshots. The security officer said he was attacked. Not only was he attacked, but that the man pulled a handgun from his waistband and threatened to shoot the security officer. Dallas police homicide say this is still under investigation. It looks like a self-defense case. It will be reviewed by the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. These are just a few of the things that have occurred in our country in the past week. As a security company owner, I've seen myself just in the past week the disobedience, the lack of respect, the violent nature of many people when you stop them for a simple reason, a question. What are you doing on the property? Do you have identification? And yet, we're still in the same place we were last month, last year. I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up and understand how security has changed and what's going on. Before I go to the next break, I do want to bring you some good news, though. A security officer, also in Texas, was able to perform CPR and save a man's life. I think we don't recognize the security officers that do a great job as much as those that we have to announce frequently of being arrested or doing something wrong. And it's the same thing with police. Recently on a TV program, a talk show in fact, they highlighted that very subject. Police are always in the headlines for all of the supposed bad things they do and the shootings and so forth. But how often do you see or hear of a story with the accolades for the officer when they do something good? And here's another good story about security. In Dover, New Hampshire, a security officer at the Wentworth Douglas Hospital was able to save a baby, a brand new baby being born in the parking lot with a few medical issues, but the security officer rushed out, noticed right away something was wrong, and began first to aid and aided in the birth. What was wrong? The umbilical cord was wrapped around the child's neck. But it was the security officer who was able to get in there and remove it from the child's neck and aid in the birth. The security officer will get an award, but more than that, I'm really thankful, excited to say that he got some recognition in local and national media. And that's how we picked up on it, because it was in the media. Remember, you can send news, good, bad, ugly, in between, indifferent, 24 hours a day. Help desk at privateofficer.com. You can also read our news blog 24 hours a day at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. Check out our social media. Be part of the conversation at facebook.com/Private Officer International or on Twitter at twitter.com/Private Officer. We'll be right back. Remember, you're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector.
going to the grocery store.
Seatbelt violators, beware.
I forgot to put it on.
If you're pulled over because you've broken the law.
Oh, it's so uncomfortable.
And you're not wearing your seatbelt.
It's broken, but I was going to have it fixed.
No matter what your excuse is, you will get a ticket in addition to the ticket for your original violation.
Click it or ticket? That's pretty easy to remember.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over. When you see lights,
Vests or reflectors.
please, give us some room. Slow down and move over. When you need us,
We've got your back.
you have ours.
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back? Please, slow down.
And move over.
It's on us to stop sexual assault,
To get in the way before it happens.
to get a friend home safe,
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
to look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up,
To step in.
to take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
The voice of the Frontline Protector. And Private Officer Beat Radio, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. I often say you never know where or when an opportunity will present itself. And like many other things in life, you can be receptive, you can be curious, you can be open-minded, you can explore the possibilities or not. As a serial entrepreneur for many, many years, and someone who really has always been involved in being self-employed, even when I was employed by an actual company or agency, I still had some type of part-time gig or business on the side. So someone like me and many others who are true entrepreneurs understands that you just don't know where things are going to come from, where ideas are going to happen, where opportunities are going to present themselves, when things are going to knock at the door, so to speak, and say, here I am. Over the last 5 years plus, I have been involved in a small business providing community resources to law enforcement and community service officers, private law enforcement, and a number of other services. And just recently, well, let's not say recently, let's say in the last 5 years, opportunities have presented themselves more frequently, especially in the last few years, where law enforcement is really on the ropes, unable to staff their department. Here on the radio show in the last year or two, we've played sound bites and giving you examples of how police are turning to civilians for everything from crime scene and evidence collection to investigating traffic collisions. Some in recent months have even hired civilian investigators to work on missing persons cases, cold cases. I have a friend of mine right now who is on a contract with a county sheriff's office reviewing cold case files and interviewing people. In fact, I have another friend of mine who has a small security company, and he no longer does security. He only provides community service officers and traffic officers, including crossing guards, which really is a bigger business than you think. There are a number of private security companies who provide crossing guard services to law enforcement, to the city or county. But it's an area that is not only growing, but exploding. So recently, a local police chief reached out in the media talking about how he needed to rethink how they did provide the services to the community. And that included what calls they could and could not respond to, what calls that they would delegate to non-sworn personnel, aka community service officers, including report taking, minor investigations, responding to non-injury accidents. There's a company in New Orleans, that's all they do. They respond as a service to law enforcement to collisions, but they don't charge. They don't charge the city or the town. They charge the insurance companies. Pretty cool, huh? There are many different avenues that come our way. We just don't take them. So recently, the police chief announced, hey, in the media, this is what we can and cannot respond to. This is what we can and cannot do. But in order to continue some, level of service to the non-urgent, robbery, violent calls, we're going to provide civilians, non-sworn officers, to provide that other level of service so that when you call 911 because somebody smashed your mailbox or you have a minor fender bender or you have a report that must be taken, somebody's coming out. And that's where we come in. Public Safety Services, Community Public Safety Services, is one of my companies. And we're expanding not only our footprint, the states that we will cover, but also we're expanding the service to include other services that police no longer can provide. If you are a security company owner, provider of service, this is an avenue for you to, A, have a much higher billing rate than you would for private security, B, work for better clients instead of housing projects and HUD and, apartments that are semi-run down and gang-infested. This is a service that you're providing to the public and working for local or county government, contracting to them. Check out publicsafetyservices.org. We are franchising that service. We will work with you. We will train you. We will equip you. We will prepare you for a new avenue, a new opportunity. There are a number of security-related or law enforcement-related opportunities out there, but you have to think outside of the box. You have to think outside of the norm. I think too many times that we get into a rut. I really do. Not people in general. We've always done it this way, so we're going to continue. It's not the best way, but it's our way. I've always been like this, XYZ. I'm always going to be that guy. I'm always going to do it the same way. I'm always going to do... If you're walking through life with blinders on, if you have tunnel vision, opportunities will pass you by, and you will be left in the dust behind and wondering why. Why isn't my company growing? Why aren't I making more money? Why isn't my life better? Why am I living paycheck to paycheck? The answer is simple. Look in the mirror. Private security may not be the best place for you today. And I say this with all sincerity, that although private security is obviously a large service industry, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody to own. It's a tough business to be in, especially today. As an owner, sometimes you get paid and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're working crappy accounts because you need the income. But you're also putting your employees and your own life on the line every day, even more so than law enforcement. If you want more information about this service, about this opportunity, contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We have a lot of different opportunities. I want to tell you that I think that a lot of people just don't or aren't willing to explore all of the great opportunities, not only that we offer, but that is available to them in many different ways and fashions and methods. People just are, I don't want to say lazy. Maybe that is part of the reason. But others are just too comfortable. I know I'm not making it. I know I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But I just don't want to put forth the effort. I just don't want to get out there and try. So I could fail. I mean, it could be worse than what I've got. Well, you'll never know if you don't try. For more information, helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We'll be right back.
In a minute, I'm going to drown in this pool, surrounded by friends and relatives. That's because Dad thinks Mom is watching me, and Mom thinks Dad is. But actually, nobody is watching me. And you rarely make a sound when you're struggling the most.
Don't assume someone else is watching. Become a water watchdog at abbyshope.org.
Logging rolls through the Washington Mountains. Logging rolls through the Washington Mountains. Logging rolls through the Washington Mountains. Far cry from the Southland, far cry from the muddy water I always knew.
Street Crimes, Part 3. In our series, our trilogy, we're wrapping up this week the new horizon for private security. And as I've said throughout these weeks, it's not really a new horizon at all, but yet it's being played up in the industry as the new, quote, services being provided by frontline security personnel. We all know what the environment is in law enforcement nationwide. Morale is down, staffing shortages are up, recruit classes are canceled at police academies, police agencies trying to do more with less, and barely getting by. Every single day, we're hearing about the lack of police response, the lack of police services, the huge list of services being no longer provided by police agencies, and so many agencies hiring civilians to fill in, whether that be an investigator or that be somebody who is a community service officer. It's just the way things are going. But there may be some reprieve. And by that I mean that some good news last week in the government of the United States. And if you're not on top of the news, and maybe you did miss it, I'll give you a small synopsis of really what happened. But the Democrats and the far left has semi-woken up as we get closer and closer to elections and said, oh, wait a minute. We didn't really mean that we wanted to defund the police. We didn't really mean that we don't need the police. We didn't really mean to say we can just close them down and do without them. That's not really what we were saying at all. We were saying that we wanted more control, more oversight. But sure, we need the police. We just don't need them to be involved in every little thing. And guess what? That is actually true. We don't need police responding to civil complaints. We don't need police responding when it's only a mental health issue and that no crime has been committed. We don't need the police writing parking tickets. We don't need the police spending a good part of their time responding to take a report of something that happened 3 weeks ago. That's a waste of manpower, a waste of time. It takes away from not only responding to the calls for service, but it takes away from being proactive. One of the reasons why crime went down in the 90s and the early 2000s was because police were allowed to be more proactive. People don't understand when police make traffic stops, it's not all about writing a ticket. Police in many areas, especially high crime, violent areas, use traffic stops as a way to discover other crimes afoot, whether that be drugs in the vehicle, illegal guns in the vehicle, wanted subjects. Just 2 weeks ago in Georgia, police on a routine traffic stop. Very minor. Seatbelt violation, I believe it was. And the driver just wasn't making a whole lot of sense. He was nervous. Police began digging into it a little bit further. He was using a fake name. He was wanted for murder from a number of years back. What would have happened if the traffic stop never occurred? Seatbelt violation, speeding violation, stop sign violation, that's minor, let's just forget that. Let's forget and forgive. They didn't mean to do it. The murderer never would have been caught. The due diligence of the officer is what brought it all together. Police use stop and search, stop and frisk, street patrols, anti-crime units, plainclothes units, drug units to catch these people in the act. That's called proactive policing. Suspicious, it looks suspicious, they're acting suspicious, crime is afoot. Let's check them out. If they have done nothing, it only takes a minute or two to determine that and let them go and be on their way. So also something very unique happened this past week, this time in Seattle. For the last 2 or 3 years, the Seattle City Council members continued ranting and raving about police reform and reducing the number of police on the force and reducing the funding, defund the police. They wanted the police department to be defunded by 50%. Now, guess what happened? Just announced this morning in Seattle, lawmakers abandoned plan to defund police. I've been telling you for months, literally, how across the country, school after school after school is not only bringing back law enforcement SROs, but they're bringing back larger numbers of them. New York City School Security, which worked for NYPD, had a goal to get rid of thousands of school safety officers. But guess what? That didn't work out too well last year. It hasn't worked out in the new year. And now they're hiring several thousand officers. A number of big, large cities have seen their police force shrink by 10, 15, 20, even in some cases 30%. But now, with murders and violent crimes steadily increasing, skyrocketing in some areas, out of control in some areas, even some city mayors declaring emergencies because there's so much violent crime in their city. Street crimes is where you stop a lot of major things from starting. You stop it, you nip it in the bud, as they used to say on the old Andy Griffin show. Barney Fife. Nip it, nip it, nip it in the bud. Stop it before it ever gets started. I mentioned this many times in my teachings when I'm traveling on the road and training, and even here on the radio program. But for a short time in my very younger days, I worked for a bug company. And in that company, they had come up with a system. They used technology and they used new methods of tracking bugs on the outside. And they would set up perimeters of these chemical stakes, multiple perimeters around the home or the commercial building, retail shop. And they would stop the bugs, as many as possible, from the outside. I teach this in my active shooter classes often as well. And they stopped the crime before it ever entered into the building. Oh, of course, the bugs still got in. They stopped the crime, I said, but I meant the bugs. They stopped the bugs before they ever got into the building. Sure, some was able to skip on through that system, and they got into the building. And so they had another perimeter. They had a layer of sprays and bug boxes and all different things that would stop those bugs once they did get inside. Police and security are actually working together in a similar system in some areas. No, it's not happening every place. No, it's not happening as much as it should. No, security is not the police. But we can, as security personnel, we can begin on the properties where we're working to get rid of some of these pests, some of these issues, simple issues that continue to make the neighborhood worse. And I'll give you an example. A security company, and I won't name them because they are doing a good job, but I just don't want to call people out like that. But a security company, a local regional security company with contracts in the Southeast, they have a unit that specializes in residential security, and that includes long-term hotels. And I recently became aware of this unit that they're sending out to high-risk, very active properties, apartments, and hotels, and they're using the law, and they're given authority by the regulatory boards that licenses them, and they're not acting as guards, they're actually acting as enforcement. And they do this similar to what I used to do many years ago. While expanding my security companies, I used the similar methods, and that is trespassing as many people that don't belong on the property, proper posting of the property, making sure people know it's private property, no trespassing, no loitering, no soliciting, no illegal parking, and if you do, we're going to take enforcement actions against you. And this company has had some success. And when I started out the security company, we did a lot of HUD subsidized properties, tax-deferred properties, residential properties, and a lot of businesses in not-so-good places. And we did exactly what this company is doing. We tried to use several methods to get people to stop coming on the property, which, cuts down the drug trade, it cuts down the loitering, it cuts down on street crimes, including robberies and so forth. As security officers, security companies, many times they don't want to take the risk, the liability. They don't want to put forth any effort more than the observe and report, and that's fine. But that's not really doing the job that's needed to be done on the property. That's not really providing security and being that protective boundary that the client is thinking that you are. I think that we, as a industry, need to step up. Street crimes are where many crimes start off. Whether it be loud music, robberies, vandalism, theft, trespassing, shoplifting, these are all crimes that we do get involved in every single day. And we should make it a priority when it's safe to do so to get more involved. If your company doesn't allow that you go hands-on or that you make detentions or arrests, or if you're not a private police officer, well, you can still be a good documenter. That includes body cameras, surveillance cameras on the property. A number of companies are installing or have installed LPRs, license plate readers. We're in conversations right now with the monitoring company for the LPRs to be able to make those available to more private properties and private security, because they track who comes and goes from the property. They run those tags through a number of databases to see if there's any wanted persons, if the vehicle is stolen, if the tag doesn't belong on the vehicle, etc. Quality of life issues, we should be taken care of. Using technology, training, resources, information to cut down on crimes on our property, we should be using. Street crimes, it's all about catching it now, stopping it from becoming bigger than it is. Bugmen, they spray. They use all of these new technologies to stop the bugs from entering the building or snapping them up, catching them if they do get in. I'm a big proponent of using technology, whether that be cameras, LPRs, motion sensors, whatever it might be, to be able to use the technology to investigate who's coming and going. I'll give you another example. We had an assault last week. The person escaped before police could arrive. But we were able to get the tag number and run that tag. Now, it came back to a woman. It was a male who was involved. But we used some of our own resources. We used some of our own online resources to look up who lived at the address, who was, in that age range. And we quickly was able to identify who that person was. I believe that as we get further and further, deeper and deeper into providing more than just guard service, that technology will play a big key part of what we do and how we provide our services every day. And I'll give you another example. I'm full of examples today. There are a number of companies that respond to alarms. Sometimes those alarms are connected to cameras so that when that alarm goes off, the camera begins to record. There are a number of security companies who are involved in proactively working to identify organized criminals, especially in the retail environment, drug dealers in the area by honing in on tags and vehicles and being able to use surveillance cameras. I've talked about on this show in recent months working with several companies on a real live crime center. We'll be able to provide services to private security companies and private law enforcement where we will be able to use LPRs and surveillance and motion sensors that will activate cameras right into our central control, and we'll be able to notify those security companies of the activation and what we see on the camera and so on and so forth. You're going to be classified as either a guard service or a public safety agency. Some states allow that designation, public safety. Many states, hospitals and colleges who have non-sworn officers are called public safety. Well, what's the difference, you ask? Guard service provides basic observe and report. Public safety not only provides protection, they provide enforcement, they provide medical response, fire service. Whatever happens on the property, they are trained and capable of responding to and not sit back and wait for the police, the fire department, or the medics. In my security companies, in my companies that I have, our staff is highly trained, and we will never sit back, no matter the liability or the risk, when a true emergency is taking place. Every week, we get news and information about security officers performing CPR, making good apprehensions, stopping a shooting. So it is, and it does happen nationwide. But being involved in street crimes, as we've talked about now for the last 3 weeks, it's not something new, but it is something that's growing, and I believe it's something that's going to be mandatory for every security company. If I had a security company working on my property and the guy just sat in the car and slept during the shift, or he was non-proactive, didn't check people that was just walking around, didn't check vehicles that looked suspicious, didn't get out and shake some door hand, they wouldn't be there because they're not doing their job. That's going to conclude street crimes, the new horizon for private security. Remember, if you need more information, or maybe you would like to start your own security company, Regional Patrol is available, and we have many different services and options. I really suggest that you take advantage now of getting out there and starting these small, proactive, public safety related companies now rather than later, because even though police are hiring again in some areas, it's never going to be the way it was 5 years ago. Private security is being used by cities, by counties, park departments, school departments, a whole array of both public and private agencies. And private security will continue to take over many law enforcement duties. I promise that. I promise you that. I do want to say that in closing, there is several hurricanes that's coming. One is now targeting Florida and parts of Alabama. One is targeting the eastern coast, the Atlantic coast. If you live along the Atlantic or the Gulf Coast, please stay safe. Make preparations now, because by the middle of the week or the end of the week, it'll be too late. Be sure to send us any video or pictures of any storms that you've been out in or any damage. We'd love to share it with our membership and our followers. You can always report breaking news at Private Officer help desk at privateofficer.com. And, of course, you can always read our breaking news at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. Join us for the conversation on Facebook /Private Officer International, on Twitter.com/Private Officer. That's going to do us for today. Be safe out there. Be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio.